today the feast of St. John Chrisotom. We're back here again in San Antonio. The epistle for this feast is taken from St. Paul's second letter to Timothy, chapter 4. Dearly beloved, I charge thee before God and Jesus Christ, who shall judge the living and the dead, by his coming and his kingdom. Preach the word, be instant in season and out of season, reprove, entreat, rebuke in all patience and doctrine. For there shall be a time when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires they will heap up to themselves teachers, having itching ears, and will indeed turn away their hearing from the truth, but will be turned unto fables. Be thou vigilant, labor in all things, do the work of an evangelist, for I am even now ready to be sanctified, and the time of my dissolution is at hand. I have fought a good fight, I have finished my course, I have kept the faith. As to the rest, there is laid up for me a crown of justice, which the Lord, the just judge, will render to me in that day, and not only to me, but to them that love his coming. And then the gospel is taken with that. It's taken with that according to St. Matthew, chapter 5. At that time, Jesus said to his disciples, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt lose its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is good for nothing any more, but to be cast out, and to be trodden on by men. You are the light of the world. The city seated on a mountain cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under the bushel, but upon a candlestick, that it may shine to all that are in the house. So let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works, and glorify God, and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Do not think that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For amen I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or tittle shall not pass of the law, till all shall be fulfilled. He therefore that shall break one of these least commandments, and shall so teach men, shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But he that shall do and teach, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Those are the words of today's Holy Gospel. So, in the Father, and the Holy Ghost, amen. Today, the feast of St. John Chrysostom, and he is one of the great doctors of the Church. But it reminds us of one of the duties of the evangelist, the duty of the preacher, the duty of the priest, the duty of the bishop. When the bishop is consecrated, and when St. John is consecrated also, but when the bishop is consecrated, particularly in the Western Rite, when he is consecrated, he is given his mitre. And the mitre is placed upon his head, and it is said in that consecration, "May you receive the horns of the two testaments," of both testaments, the Old and the New Testament, that you might appear fearsome to the enemies of the truth. So we have to remember that the evangelist is a man in flesh on this earth. The priest is a man in flesh on this earth. And he is dealing with real devils who are on this earth. He's dealing with real devils that are in the houses of parliament, that are in the houses of kings. He's dealing with real devils of this time. And we are men of doctrine. We are supposed to teach the Holy Gospel. We teach the sacred words of God. We teach the Holy Gospel. But is the Gospel to be taught only as a catechism? Remember that there are 10 commandments, children. Remember there are 12 articles of the Creed. Remember that there is a law that one should be good and one should never commit sin. And that if you commit sin, you go to confession. And that if you don't believe the truth, you should believe the truth. And to speak only in this way. We find in the lives of the saints and in the lives of the gospel, what is the duty of the evangelist? St. John Chrisotom was one such man. He is called the honey sweet doctor because when he was born, honeybees, as a little boy, flew inside of his mouth and flew out. Knowing that this man would be gifted with a great speech, ability to preach the Word of God. And he preached the Word of God. And against his will, he was made the Bishop of Constantinople. Constantinople was the principal city that ruled the world at his time. And what did he do when he became the Bishop of Constantinople? He did not only preach, be good and don't be bad, believe the truth and don't believe the evil, but he was a shepherd of souls. And what did he do? He saw that there was a great wicked empress named Eudoxia. And Eudoxia hated John Chrisotom from the moment that he became the bishop until the moment of his death. And she fought against him from the beginning until the end. She stole from her people. She was guilty of impurity. She was guilty of stealing. She was guilty of oppressing the poor. She was guilty of great moral wickedness. She was not necessarily a heretic. She didn't necessarily teach all great heresies. She was just wicked. And she was difficult and stealing from the widows, stealing from those who had little lambs, stealing their things, stealing their land, stealing their money, taking great evil and doing great evil against the poor. And John Chrysostom stood up against her and he condemned her by name. He condemned her. And he condemned the wicked leaders of Constantinople. They were all Catholics. He says, you are living impure lives. You are living immoral lives. You are oppressing the poor, you are wicked, and you are to be condemned. He imitated the greatest of all the prophets, who is named John the Baptist. The man who was greater than any prophet that came before him, and who the Lord said that there would be no man born of woman who would be as great as him. And what did John the Baptist do? He condemned Herod for adultery. He condemned Herodia. He condemned the wickedness of their behavior in public. And so he condemned them. It is not necessary, it is not sufficient to only say the truth. We have to say that Martin Luther is teaching heresy. Martin Luther is to be excommunicated. We have to say in our times, Pope Francis is being wicked. Wherever we find the wickedness of the devil publicly harming souls, this must be condemned. And it is the duty of the prophet, the duty of the evangelist, the duty of the priest, the duty of the bishop to speak out against these evils. We do not speak against every single individual sin. No, we do not, except in a generic way. But we must speak against the great evils of the great leaders who are doing great harm. And this is the reason why the church, for instance, down the last 2,000 years, has always tried to maintain an independence from the civil authority, an independence from the laity. Because when a priest is made a priest by a king, and all his money comes from the king, and all his support comes from the king, and he is designated by the king, when the king is evil, the priest will decide to not notice. In India, for instance, at the request of the nobles, the Catholic nobles, the Portuguese, they did not want people to know that they weren't going to confession. And when they went to confession, they were, remember, in public lines in the confessional on Sunday. They didn't want the people to see them going to confession. And they didn't want, they wanted special treatment from the priest. So they built St. Anne's Church in Goa. You can visit it now. It's been restored. And in the church, they have the confession line for the people. And then inside the wall is very, very thick. It's about 10 feet thick. And in the wall, they made a tunnel. And the tunnel then makes a hole to the confessional. So the priest sits in the confessional and he has one penitent on this side, one penitent on that side, and then there's a hole in the wall that no one can see, and that's where the nobles came to confession. So the nobles would come down as if they were going to confession, but they didn't go to confession. They just drank some beers and whiskey and whatever, and then they went back upstairs. And they said, well, I went to confession. And if they went to confession, the priest knew that if anybody went to confession on that side, you better give them a nice penance. You better not be mean to that person. And so there was a great abuse because the laity tried to control the church. But it is the duty of the priest, it is the duty of the evangelist to imitate St. John Chrysostom and to imitate St. John the Baptist and all of the great saints who stood up against the wicked leaders of the earth. That is, bishops who teach heresy like the Arians, bishops that go against God in a public way, priests that go against God in a public way, and kings that go against God in a public way, and the Pope when he goes against God in a public way. St. Ivo of Chartres condemned Pope St. Paschal II, and he said, "We will not follow you if you maintain your wicked ways. I am telling you, wicked Pope, stop being wicked." So says St. Ivo of Chartres to Paschal II. And Paschal II was so terrified of St. Ivo. He said, "Ivo will take away my crown. Ivo will take away my tiara." And he backed down. And he had the problem of what? The problem of listening to the kings. The problem of listening to the world. The problem of being soft with the world. No one minds if you condemn a heresy. Nobody minds. Nobody minds if you condemn, but if you condemn a heretic, you're judgmental. If you condemn great evil, you're judgmental. And so we have to recognize it's necessary for the evangelist to condemn great evil. For the salt, how does it preserve meat? One thing that St. Augustine points out, it has a certain sting. Salt has a certain sting. When we say salt loses its savor, it no longer stings. It's soft. It doesn't have taste anymore. It loses its savor. And the devil makes the Catholic priest lose its savor. This is what has happened to the SSPX. It has lost its savor. It no longer has its savor. Just watching the video of a seminary video of Zeitskofen, which isn't so bad, it's just soft. And then another, the weekly news report from SSPX.org that we're going to support Fatima, and Fatima means be meaningful, and Fatima means pray your rosary, and Fatima means do penance, and Fatima means love, and Fatima means encouragement, and Fatima still has great meaning today. Isn't that wonderful? What is the duty of the Catholic priest? He is to tell the Pope, "You, Pope, have disobeyed God. You have disobeyed the law of God. You are offensive to God. You are disobeying the Blessed Virgin Mary, Pope Francis, and you must obey her, and you must consecrate brush the Immaculate Heart of Mary. You wickedly said to Putin that we speak not of Fatima. We don't speak of Fatima here. If you don't speak of Fatima here, you don't go to heaven after you die. If you don't speak of Fatima here, you are not pleasing to God, and you are not fulfilling the law of God." We have to say to Pope Francis, stop teaching heresy. Pope Francis, obey the commandment of God. That's what we have to say. And we have to pray, not only to pray our rosaries in a spiritual way that offends no one, but remember the gospel has a salt that stings. Put salt on your wound. Take it, put salt on your wound. It will sting. And salt must sting. And if the salt does not sting, it has lost its savor. It is no longer valuable being salt. Therefore, what good is it but to be trodden underfoot by men? And then it says that, and then also St. Paul says how he fought the good fight. And this is chosen for the great doctors of the church, such as St. John Chrysostom. "I stand before God. I charge thee before God," says St. Paul to Timothy, "and Jesus Christ, who shall judge the living and the dead, by whose coming and by his coming and his kingdom. Preach the word. Be instant, in season and out of season." In season, everybody's listening. Like on Palm Sunday, they follow Christ. Out of season, they're not listening. Like on Good Friday, when Christ said, "Nominatim," we say in Latin, by name. He said, "You, Caiaphas, you shall see the Son of Man coming in power and majesty." He said that on Good Friday. On Sunday, in season, with all the people standing around him. And the Pharisees said, "How can you let the children praise you? How can you let them act as if you're God?" And in season, he said, with all the popularity of the people behind him, Jesus Christ said in season, "If the children did not praise me, the very rocks would cry out." And out of season, 6 days later on Good Friday, he said that you, Caiaphas, shall see power and majesty, shall see the Son of Man come with power and majesty. And guess what happened when they went away from Calvary? Guess what happened when he died at 3 p.m.? The rocks cried out. There was an earthquake and the rocks cried out. St. John Chrysostom died in exile. He was driven away from his diocese. He was driven away and driven away. Why? Because he was too controversial. He was hated by the nobles. He was hated by Eudoxia. He was hated by the leaders because he condemned them. He was loved by the poor, but he was hated by them. And they threw him out, and they threw him out. And going by the church of St. Basilicus, a martyr of a few hundred years before, 100 years before John Chrysostom, came to him and said, John, you will be with me tomorrow. And he grew suddenly very ill. He received his viaticum, and he went to heaven the next day in exile. St. John Chrysostom, the bishop of the second greatest city in Christendom, the greatest, of course, is Rome, and the second is Constantinople, because he was a faithful bishop, because he preached the truth in season and out of season, he died in exile. He did not die in Constantinople. He died in exile, and he was the honey sweet doctor. He preached the truth beautifully, but it was not acceptable to them, and the truth will never be acceptable to the enemies of God. Never. Be in season, out of season. Reprove, entreat, rebuke in all patience. Reprove, entreat, rebuke. We beg some, come to the Mass, come to the seminary, come to the faith, come to the religious life, come to the retreat, come to the Mass. We entreat, and some say yes, and then they don't come, and some say yes, and they finally come, and some say no, and they change their minds, and others say no, and they don't change their minds, but we entreat in season, out of season, and rebuke. We rebuke. The apostle must rebuke. The rebuking and the preaching the truth in season, out of season is gone from the Society of St. Pius X. Archbishop Lefebvre said, there are Masons in the church. There are Masons destroying the church. There are Masons attacking the church. There is an evil Jewish conspiracy throughout the entire world. And the Masons and the wickedness of the Jews are trying to destroy the Holy Roman Catholic Church. And they are working to destroy souls. And we have to pray for the conversion of the Jews, which will come at the end of the world, for the consecration of Russia by the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and the victory over the enemies and persecutors of the church. We have a prayer against the persecutors of the church. And many souls are being killed for their faith, the true Holy Roman Catholic faith. And so we have to defend them. If Pope Francis is not defending them, he is attacking the friends of God. He is befriending the enemies of God. He is disobeying the Blessed Virgin Mary, and he is doing it in great public, and therefore he must be condemned in public. Bishop Fillet is failing his duty as a bishop of the church. He has a Nerf mitre. If you run a Nerf mitre against somebody, all that happens is that they think it's really funny. There's no spear, there's no sharpness, there is no, both testaments are not there. He is not fearsome to the enemies of the truth. He is not condemning the evils and heresies coming out of the Vatican. He is trying the quote-unquote nice guy approach. And what do they claim? We are still salt. We in the new Society of St. Pius X, we're still salt. We're just trying the nice guy approach. And yet they look exactly like every single news media organization. You see their now modern news with a little ball spinning, and they're saying, we believe that you should love God more than you love the devil. Isn't that nice? They are not speaking as men of God. They are not attacking the devil. And when they do say the truth, they say it so soft that only one can say, I think he said the truth, but I'm not sure. I think he said something right, but I'm not sure. He doesn't say it with strength, doesn't say it with power, doesn't say it against the enemies of God. It is necessary to rebuke and entreat, as St. John Chrysostom did, and he died in exile. And what about Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre, the founder of our Society of St. Pius X, who is now in the kingdom of heaven? He died in exile. That's where he died. Bishop Fillet wants to die in a comfortable house in Rome. The new society by its tenth wants to be perceived the same as all other quote-unquote traditional orders, who are defenders of the beauty and the holiness of the Mass, and the beauty of the holiness of the priesthood, and the holiness of being a good Catholic. And it's so much better than not being bad. But yet we must recognize that this is not the right approach. We have to say the truth is the only truth. Jesus Christ is the only answer to every problem in the world, and there is no other. And there are real sins in the world today, destroying in every single country, every law that remains of Christianity is being removed. Globalizing the world so that there will be one reign under the Antichrist. That's what's being prepared. It shall be stopped. The Antichrist is not going to succeed now. It is not his day. It is not his time. It is the time of the victory of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It is not the time of the devil. The devil's time is up. His head is about to be crushed. And therefore we must recognize that we are in the time of the Blessed Virgin, not in the time of the devil. And it is necessary to rebuke in season and out of season, says St. Paul in the second letter of tendency. For there shall be a time when they will not endure sound doctrine. They didn't endure the sound doctrine of St. John Chrysostom. That was 1,500 years ago. They don't endure sound doctrine now. What is that time? To tell you the truth, the time when they will not endure sound doctrine started when Adam went out of the Garden of Paradise, and it will end when Elias and Enoch killed the Antichrist by their prayers. Between the time of the ending of the world and the beginning of the world, there is time. And in time, there will be always souls who shall not hear sound doctrine. Always. And our time is no different. It's just that there's more in our time than in many other times. But according to their own desires, they will heap to themselves teachers. That's why you have public school system. That's why you have modern education. That's why you have everybody has their own church that they go to. Who will heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears, and will indeed turn away their hearing from the truth, but will be turned into fables. The words of those that are not imitating Christ, the words of those that are not speaking the words of Christ, they are fables. They're fairy tales and they're lies. And they have not power, and they will not benefit souls, and they will not last. Many heresies have come, and they have gone. Many heretics have come, and they have been forgotten. And how long will they be forgotten? Forever in hell. Sinners have come, and they have gone, and they are forgotten. How long will they be forgotten? Forever in hell. It isn't going to end. They are turning to fables. There are so many fables. Evolution, the foolishness of Galileo and the heliocentrism, the foolishness of ecumenism, the foolishness of religious liberty, the foolishness of subjectivism, the foolishness summarized in one grave heresy, evolution, modernism, and all the foolishness of the modern world, worshipping of animals, stupidity, and the worship of nature. All these are foolish fables, and they are nothing. But do thou be vigilant. Labor in all things. Do the work of an evangelist. Fulfill thy ministry. Be sober. For I am even now ready to be sacrificed, and the time of my dissolution is at hand. Here is St. Paul speaking about himself. I'm getting ready to have my head chopped off. I'm getting ready to be put to death. But my words shall stand at the end of the world. And he has 14 epistles. Here we are. 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years after St. Paul wrote these words, reading them. And St. Paul was in prison when he wrote these words. And St. Paul was about to have his head chopped off. And what did he say is happening when his head gets chopped off? He's going to his rewards. I'm about ready to have my head chopped off. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. As to the rest, there is laid up for me a crown of justice, which the Lord, the just judge, shall render me in that day. The day the Romans took St. Paul, and the day they took out St. Peter, on the same day, they brought St. Peter outside the city, and they crucified him upside down. They brought St. Paul, and they chopped off his head at a place called the Three Fountains, Trefontaine, and his head bounced. It hit the ground, and it bounced, and out came water. and it bounced about 30 feet. It hit a second time, and out came a second fountain of water, and it bounced again. And it hit a third time, and there came 3 fountains of water. Water coming from the head of the greatest apostle that has ever been. And on that day, his head was chopped off. And what was that day? It was the day that he received his reward, the day that he finished his race, the day of the victory. So the race, he runs across the finish line, he gets the gold medal, he wins the race, he attains the prize, and he collapses and dies because he has attained his victory and he goes to eternal rest. That's what happened on that day. And he saw Peter, who was crucified upside down, and they both went to the reward that day. But consider here on earth, the Romans said, who are our greatest enemies alive today? We're going to destroy Christianity. We're going to kill that Peter, who's the head of the church. We're going to kill that Paul, who is called his twin apostle, the greatest preacher. And when we wipe them out, it will be the end of the Catholic Church. They made twin apostles, St. Peter and Paul, on that June the 29th. And St. Peter, sanctified by his blood dripping on the ground. He sanctified the city of Rome, and it took over the place of Jerusalem as the holy city. Jerusalem was a holy city before, until Peter was hanging upside down. And Peter's blood dripped on the ground of Rome, and that's what made Rome sacred, and that's what made Rome holy, and that's what made Rome the place where Christ decided to rule, because Peter shed his blood there, and the fool Satan killed him there. And the fool Satan killed Paul in the same place. And hence the powerful preaching that has converted the world came from Rome. And the powerful blood that converted the world of St. Peter came from Rome. And the foolish devil put them to death on the same day. And Peter went to his happy reward, where he was shown the great love of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. And St. Paul went to his happy reward. But they condemned the heresies. They condemned the heretics. They condemned the great public sinners of their age. And they defended the poor. They defended the innocent. They defended the weak. And they happily shed their blood at the end of their course. If God allows us the great glory of martyrdom, if He allows us that great victory, it shall be at the end of the course. It shall be at the end of the race. It shall be at the time of the greatest victory. That shall be the time. And until that time, our Lord says, they shall not hurt a hair of your head. That there are many are the sorrows of the just, from every one of them, each one of them, the Lord has delivered him. So we must preach the word in season, out of season, until the time of the great victory. And we cannot be defeated. And preaching in season, out of season means to rebuke the great leaders of this world who are against God. To rebuke those that are violating the law of God, such as Pope Francis, such as Bishop Fellay, who is not following the law of God. He has betrayed his master, Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre. He betrayed his master, our Lord Jesus Christ. He has betrayed the truth. He is not standing for the truth. What is inside of his own personal conscience, God only knows. But what he is doing is gravely harmful to souls and gravely harmful to the church and leading souls away from God. He is not preaching as our ancestors preached. He is not preaching as Archbishop Lefebvre preached. He is not doing the work that he is supposed to be doing. He is not condemning and reproving and rebuking injustice. And therefore he is greatly loved by the world. But that love shall pass, and it shall be forgotten. And we must continue the work of the evangelist until the ending of times. Those God bless you all, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.